What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, we're talking FPL captaincy for game week 29. There's only 4 fixtures to choose from, so I'm going to go through every single one in this video, go through the main captain that I know a lot of people are going to be looking at, and then go through some of the other options. I know not everyone's happy with Harry Kane necessarily. They're looking for another player to go for this week. Maybe it is the time to do something a little bit different. We'll talk about that along the way. If you enjoy it, please do give it a like, hit subscribe if you're new around here, and let's jump into it. So I'm going to go through all the matches as they're listed on the FPL page. So Fulham versus Leeds is first, and I am recording this as always before some of the press conferences, so there might be news that affects your decision. Obviously you should pay attention to that when making your choice. With Leeds, we've already heard from Bielsa, and he made it sound quite promising for Bamford in particular, that he would be available, that he might be in some pain, but should still be able to play. I know there's a video circulating around on Twitter that says he missed training, but there's a few Leeds reporters, I think one of them is called Baron Cross, who said that happens sometimes, right? The footage could be old, and that he might miss training but still be able to play. That is obviously a little bit of a concern. For when it comes to captaincy, like having him in your team, you probably keep him at this point, but to captain him is a different story. Looking at the defensive numbers, we talked about Fulham last week quite a bit when obviously they were playing Man City. So the numbers over the season are not great. 1.39 expected goals conceded isn't fantastic. And then last 6 and last 4, there is some improvement. But they're still not this elite defence that everyone talks about. They can be gotten out. Man City did score a few goals past them. I appreciate Leeds aren't quite at Man City's level, but they are a very good attacking team. Fulham haven't had the easiest games, though, to be fair. So you'd expect these numbers to be not quite as good. So Man City, Liverpool and Spurs in the last 3. And then to make up the rest of the 6 is Palace, Sheffield United, Burnley. So fairly easy games, I would say. The first 3, but not necessarily the second 3. So they're an okay defence. I wouldn't be too worried about them. I think there could be goals in this one for Leeds. And the same for Fulham, to be honest. Like Leeds numbers, you don't need me to talk about them again. Pretty poor defensive side. There has been some improvement. And the last 4 games were Chelsea, West Ham, Villa, Southampton. And then when you put it out to 6, it's Wolves and Arsenal. So the defensive numbers have come down quite a bit, up from the 1.58 high for the season. But I would always back them to concede chances. This game in the reverse fixture was 4-3. A lot's happened since then, especially with Fulham. I just think they're a bit of a different side now than they were back then, but I still see goals in this one. I think Bamford I would just rule out because of the concerns over him playing. Arguably right now, although over the season, right, if you look at kind of underlying numbers for expected goals and stuff like that, Bamford comes out on top ahead of Rafinha, and he does have penalties as well. When it comes to recent form, though, if that's something that you prefer, Rafinha's looking good. 2.01 expected goal involvement. He's had 7 shots in the box, more than Bamford over his last 4, though his minutes were slightly higher. But he's also created a load of chances as well. That's also good for bonus points. Extra point if they do get a clean sheet. Extra point for any goal because he's a midfielder. If I was going to captain someone from Leeds this week, I might actually side towards Rafinha just about. I think with Lookman or Madja, you're taking a little bit too much of a punt. I know that Leeds give up a lot of chances, and if I had these 2 in my team, I'd be fairly happy, to be honest, about having a bit of a differential versus the crowd. But when it comes to captaincy, I don't think they're good enough. I think that's just a punt too far for me. So for this game in particular, there's probably only one player I would look at, and that is Rafinha. I think if everything equal, i.e. Bamford hadn't got injured, I do think you can make a case for him to be higher up the list in terms of captaincy. But Rafinha is the one to go for if you want to target this game. Madja if you want to take an absolute massive punt. Same with Lookman, but Rafinha is definitely the one for me. If this was a normal game week where we had 10 fixtures, this Brighton versus Newcastle is definitely one that I would skip and just do at the end, possibly in the other matches section. But as there's only 4 fixtures, we'll talk about it. I think numbers-wise, look, you already know Brighton's defensive numbers are pretty good. It's not necessarily translating into as many clean sheets as possibly it should, but the numbers are good, and I do see a tough game for Newcastle. I honestly wouldn't consider any Newcastle player for captaincy at all. I wouldn't even consider any Newcastle player for my team. And I know a lot of people, I've seen a few comments say, look, you keep saying it's guaranteed clean sheet against Newcastle, etc. They could score. Of course they could score, but in FPL, we're always betting on the likely outcome, right? That's all it is. After that, everything's out of your hands. Everything points towards a Brighton clean sheet. So we're not captaining Newcastle players, in my opinion. You could look at captaining a Brighton player. Arguably, this is the best fixture, both for clean sheet and attacking returns. You look at Newcastle's numbers, they ain't getting any better no matter what time frame you look at. Last 4, last 6, or the whole season. They're just a poor defence. In terms of choosing a player becomes a bit trickier, right? Because obviously a lot of people will be just bringing in a Brighton player just for this week, maybe on the free hit. Danny Welbeck's numbers in particular are a little bit down because his minutes aren't as high as others over the last 4. Now, that is a slight concern about whether he will start again or not, because he has missed. Obviously, he had an injury, and then he came back and didn't play every single game after that. But he did get decent minutes in the last one, and his numbers are pretty promising. I think if I was taking a massive punt this week, Welbeck against Newcastle could be the one. In terms of midfielders, yes, on recent numbers, last 4 matches, Trossard is ahead of Gross, but over the season they're quite equal, and Gross probably still has penalties. So if I was going to go for a midfielder, I think it would be him for captaincy. And then you've got good old Neil Maupay, always posting pretty good numbers. Okay, the expected goal involvement's not that high over the last 4, but again, if you wanted a bit of a punt, I don't really see any issue with going for him. He should start, probably not on penalties anymore, which is a bit of a shame. But I do think Brighton are worth looking at. I know people will laugh it off, but they create quite a few chances, and look, you can say they have poor finishes in their team. They could just be on a bit of a cold streak right now. But I like them as an outside bet. I think I'd prefer to go for a Brighton attacker than a Fulham attacker, for example. But I appreciate that in the grand scheme of things, where people are looking for captaincy, they're not looking at this fixture. One last thing I will touch on is Dunk. So I see a few Dunk captaincies going around. Look, if you've watched my videos for a while, you'll know that I'm not a big fan of captaining defenders. I did it once in a double game week for Duffy at Brighton. Didn't go too well. Obviously, you shouldn't let past experiences like that dictate going forward. But as much as Brighton's defence is good, and I don't trust Newcastle's attack, obviously if they do score, then the captaincy's just done. And you can say that Dunk has got good goal threat. Of course he has, but it's not. It's not like an attacker where you can look at their numbers and say, right, they're going to get a goal every other game on average. Dunk is not that high of a goal threat. He's not getting a goal every other game. He might be lucky to get one in the next kind of 5-6 fixtures, right? So I don't think I'd necessarily be relying on that. Of course, he could get some bonus points, but there's got to be attackers out there that are just better options that we're going to talk about in a minute. I honestly think a Brighton attacker is better than Lewis Dunk. I'll just say that. I know why people are doing it, because they're looking at it as a guaranteed clean sheet, i.e. 6 points. Bonus points is literally a bonus, and then if he gets an attacking return, then it looks great. But I don't know if his ceiling is as high as people are necessarily latching onto. For me, like I said, I'd rather captain a Brighton attacker than Lewis Dunk. West Ham versus Arsenal. Tricky game to call, right? You're coming up against 2 fairly good defences, I would say. They're not, again, we always compare teams to Chelsea and Man City, who are the elite, and obviously Brighton's numbers are pretty good. But in terms of the next tier down, Arsenal and West Ham are definitely there as 2 fairly decent defences you don't necessarily want to come up against too often. But at the same time, their attackers also post some pretty good numbers as well. You can see there, Antonio only had 5 shots in the box over the last 4, but his expected goal involvement was 3.08 because he just gets into such good positions close to goal. If you remember his goal against, I think it was Spurs, it was pretty much on the goal line where he put it in. I think the one against Man City was kind of close to that as well. So yeah, he gets into good positions close to the goal. His XG is high because of that, even if he doesn't take as many shots. A lot of people are looking at Jesse Lingard. I'm just not so sure about him, right? I know he's got a lot of returns. I keep going back to the Aston Villa game, but we talk about how good of a shot stopper Martinez is. Well, it wasn't against West Ham. 2 shots straight at him from Lingard, and they both went in. It is encouraging the amount of shots he is taking, although, as you can see, he took less shots than Antonio. He took more shots than Antonio. He created more chances than Antonio, but his expected goal involvement is lower. So the quality of those chances or those shots are not quite as good. And also, like, people have told me all season how good Arsenal's defence is, but all of a sudden now we're captaining Jesse Lingard. I don't get it. I think Arsenal's defence is kind of tough. The one thing, obviously, with them is Europa League. They've just played, will they rotate a little bit? Possibly. I don't know. If Arsenal could get a win under their belt in this game, then maybe top 4 is still on for them. But it is going to be a tight game. I'm not seeing a huge amount of goals. Like I think we saw the Arsenal-Spurs game was 2-1. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw something like that again. Aubameyang, I thought he looked he got into some good positions last night. There was a shot really early on where he was through on goal. Really nice control. Should have buried it, to be honest. He just wasn't quite on it last night. But again, he's having quite a few shots in the box, similar to Jesse Lingard. But again, his XG is higher because he gets into better positions. He's taking shots from better locations, etc. But he doesn't create many chances, but he is on penalties. It's just whether or not he'll start. Will he start as a centre forward or on the left? I don't think it really matters in terms of his output. I've got Saka on there. But again, there's just too many concerns over him starting. Odegaard is someone else that people are looking at. For me, like, that is a player that, okay, maybe you punt on for a blank game week, and maybe you keep him in your team because Arsenal have got good fixtures. But for me, he's just not captaincy material for me. I haven't seen enough for him, like in terms of goal threat, scoring enough goals to start thinking about him as a captain. So if I had to pick someone from here, I look at the last kind of 6 and last 4 games for Arsenal. Their defence is looking pretty good. They've played Spurs, Burnley, Leicester, Man City, Leeds and Villa. So they haven't played like easy teams either. So defence is looking pretty good. I actually think I'd probably go for Aubameyang out of all of these. If I had to go for someone from West Ham, then I'd still put Antonio ahead of Jesse Lingard, although we do have to take into account that Lingard might be on penalties, although they do look like they're going to swap between him and Rice. That's something to pay attention to. But I wouldn't be surprised if this was low scoring, like a 1-0 or a 1-1 or something like that. I don't see a huge amount of goals personally, but let me know in the comments below if you think different. Okay, leaving the obvious one till last, right? A lot of people are going to be captaining Harry Kane. Some people are going to be put off after what happened last night. So I think everyone thought that Spurs were going to go through, and they ended up losing 3-0 after extra time. So one key thing here is Harry Kane has played 120 minutes. Not ideal, right? Not ideal at all. Is there any chance that he gets rested for this game? I would say absolutely zero. So I'm not worried about that. And I also don't think I would let an extra 30 minutes put me off captaining him. I do think he is the standout captain this week. His stats all season have been good. Obviously, he's been putting the goals away, creating lots of chances as well. There is some concerns over the fact that Son is not playing. He has become somewhat of a provider recently, with Bale and Kane taking more of the shots. So him being out of the team potentially is not good. I say potentially because he's not been 100% ruled out, although it does seem quite likely that he won't play. Like, I've got him in my team. I'm not expecting him to play at all. So that is a little bit of a concern. One thing that kind of is positive for Spurs is Aston Villa's, again, defensive numbers are not as good as we probably put them up. Like, I think most people think Aston Villa is this really solid defence, and I don't think it necessarily is. Martinez on his day, yes, definitely is a good shot stopper. I mentioned that just a minute ago when we were talking about Lingard, and he does help them keep more clean sheets, and they're probably I don't want to use the wrong word. They're probably not due as many clean sheets as they've got, right? That's all there is to it. So if he has an off day or something like that and Spurs can get at Villa, there is goals in this one. I just think on penalties, guaranteed to play 80 to 90 minutes. Kane is the standout. And I know people like to look for something different, but I think this week of all weeks it's very difficult to do that for loads of reasons, like I've just spoken about. Will players definitely play, like Aubameyang? What about the defences they're coming up against, etc.? Bamford, who knows? Like, I've got Grealish on here because I think some people will look at him if he's fit. But again, is he going to play? It's a bit of a risk. Dean Smith has said, he could be available or something like that, or he's hopeful he'll be available. But who knows? Does that mean he starts? Does he come on? It's just too risky. With Watkins, interestingly, Spurs' defence is actually looking better than Villa, which I don't think is too surprising. And again, if Grealish does miss out, I do worry about Watkins a little bit, but he is taking quite a few shots in the box still. He's at 8, which is the same as Harry Kane. Another obviously option is Bale. Now, he came on last night at 60 minutes. And at that point, you probably thought Spurs were going to go through. He gets a 30-minute run out, happy days. But then he had to play to the end of the game. So then he's had to play 60 minutes midweek. And we already know Spurs have already rested in midweek to then only play like 57 minutes the next week. So that's a little bit of a worry for me. Again, he's one of those players, if I had him in my team, I'd be happy just having him rather than looking to captain him. You could go for it for something different, but even when he's played these matches, Kane's numbers are still better, and the fact that he plays 90, it's just such a massive thing, especially with penalties as well. So I'm not put off by the Aston Villa defence at all. I think Kane was the standout captain going into this week. I still think he is. The 120 minutes is obviously a little bit of a worry. I wouldn't really put too much emphasis on the fact that Spurs lost. It's a different game in the league, etc. Different defence. And they did rotate a few players, right, last night. Like Reguilon came on late. If he would have played, it probably would have been better for Spurs, etc. The only thing I will say, right, apart from the 120 minutes, is Mourinho came out afterwards and he didn't throw the players completely under the bus, but he pretty much also did. He was talking about their attitude, and he's giving them instructions, what more can he do? He gives them the instructions if they don't follow it, etc. I'm not sure what the morale will be like in the Spurs camp right now. So if you wanted to go somewhere different, all I think you're doing this week, if you go not Kane, you're just backing against Kane. You're not really backing against Spurs. Bale's not going to be that highly captain. Son definitely isn't either. You're really banking on Kane blanking, and then outside of that, there's going to be no other player massively with massive effective ownership due to captaincy. There just isn't, right? Lingard, Antonio, Aubameyang, they're going to be captained by a few people because there's not that many options, but it's not going to be huge. So if you want to back against Kane, this is probably the week to do it. But for me, he is still the standout captain, I think. So that is it for this one. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a like and hit subscribe if you're new around here as well. I will have a deadline stream later, and it probably will be a slightly longer one as well. So not just the usual hour, we'll probably do it a bit longer. So keep an eye out for that on the YouTube channel later. I'll schedule it and put a tweet out, etc. Let me know in the comments below who you are captaining this week. Who isn't going for Kane? And if you're not, who are you going for instead? Do let me know in the comments below. It'd be interesting to see just how many people aren't going for Harry. And I'm sure some opinions have changed after last night as well. And lastly, if you want to support me on Patreon, patreon.com/letstalkfpl. Everyone that signs up goes up on the Legends wall, so thank you to everyone that already has. By the time this video goes out, there'll probably be a Q&A already over there. If not, it'll be coming soon, so make sure to check that out. Obviously depends what tier you're on. I'll put my team reveal up there later once my transfers have been made before the deadline stream as well. So if you want to check that out, make sure you do. I've tried to get this captaincy video out as early as possible. With Friday deadlines are an absolute nightmare, so I'm going to leave it there, go and get it edited, get it uploaded, so you can hopefully enjoy it. Like I said, I'll see you for the deadline stream. If I don't see you there, good luck in Game Week 29. Then have fun over the international break, and we'll be back for Game Week 30 with loads more content.